If someone had told me I'd sign my name on a marriage contract instead of a job offer, I would have asked what kind of sick joke that was. Adriana Wolf had practically purchased all of Silvercrest City. Real estate, politicians, even the night sky if it had a price. She'd paid it. But there was one thing she couldn't buy more of: time. 90 days. Adriana! Graham's voice, her chief counsel, cut through the silence, calm and emotionless. He was the only thing in this penthouse office not cowed by Adriana's fortune. Your father's will is very clear. By the end of this fiscal quarter, if you do not legally marry and maintain that status for 365 days, Adriana cut him off. Her tone as icy as the sheet of glass separating her from the city sprawling 52 floors below. She loathed that sentence. She loathed the way her father, even 6 feet underground, still managed to dictate her life. He knew Adriana saw marriage as a foolish emotional merger, an unnecessary liability. So, of course, he had made it the final key to keeping the empire she had spent the last 20 years building. If she failed, all controlling shares of Wolf Industries would be transferred to a charitable foundation run by his old rivals. One last joke from hell. You will lose everything, Graham said flatly. Adriana swiveled her expensive leather chair. The afternoon Silvercrest City sun cut through, illuminating her perfectly sculpted face at 40. Not a hair was out of place. Her charcoal gray power suit was without a wrinkle. She was the embodiment of absolute control. Then find me someone. Her voice was sharp. I don't care who it is. I need a name on a piece of paper. A transaction. Graham was not surprised. He had anticipated this. He pushed a thin beige file across the polished mahogany desk. I've narrowed down the list based on your criteria. Discreet, no social ties, and motivated. Adriana opened the file. Inside was not a list, only a single page, a snapshot, clearly a headshot stapled to the top corner. Nora Hawley, 24 years old. The girl's eyes in the photo were large, hazel, and held a fear Adriana hadn't felt in decades. Messy brown hair, a frayed t-shirt. She was the opposition of everything in this room. She owes St. Jude Medical Center $450,000, Graham explained. End-of-life care costs for her father and now the surgery bills for her younger brother. They will pull the plug on the boy if she doesn't make the first payment by Friday. Desperate, Adriana said, as if she were tasting a strange word. Purchasable, Graham corrected. She's clean. No criminal record. No problematic boyfriend on social media. She is a ghost. Adriana closed the file. A ghost. Perfect. A controllable variable. 1 year, Adriana commanded. An unbreakable confidentiality agreement. Ironclad NDA. She gets what she wants. I get what I need. She looked out the window, arranged the meeting now. 2 hours later, Nora Hawley stood in that same office, trembling. She wasn't trembling from the cold, although her thin jacket was soaked after jogging 3 blocks from the bus stop in a sudden Silvercrest City downpour. She trembled from fear. This place didn't feel real. It felt like something out of a magazine she could never afford to buy. The carpet beneath her feet was so thick it swallowed sound, and the scent in the air, something like jasmine and money, made her want to suffocate. And then there was her, Adriana Wolf. The woman sat behind a desk as large as Nora's entire studio apartment. She didn't look up when Nora was shown in by the lawyer. She was reading something on a tablet as thin as a knife. Miss Hawley, Graham said. Thank you for coming. I am not sure why I'm here. Nora stammered, hands clutching the strap of her frayed handbag. The hospital had called her this morning, saying there was an anonymous benefactor who wanted to discuss her debt. She had thought it was a cruel joke. Adriana finally looked up. Her eyes were still gray, cold. They swept over Nora from her wet hair to her dirty sneakers, and Nora felt as if she had just been audited and found wanting. You're here, Adriana said, her voice low and smooth. Because you are drowning and I am selling oxygen. Nora swallowed hard. I have seen your file, Adriana continued, rising. She was taller than Nora thought, and her presence filled the room. "Your brother Eli, he needs bone marrow surgery." "A surgery, I'm told, your insurance refuses to cover." "How? How do you know?" Nora took an instinctive step back. "I know everything related to my assets," Adriana replied. "And I'm offering to make you one." Graham placed a thick leather-bound document on the desk. "This is a marriage proposal, Miss Hawley." Nora's heart stopped beating. "What?" "Miss Wolf needs a wife for 365 days, Graham explained mechanically. "Completely legal, completely confidential. During that time, you will live here at the Wolf Manor. You will attend events. You will smile for the cameras. You will play the part of a devoted wife." "Is this a joke?" Nora laughed, a dry, panicked sound. "Is this a reality TV show?" "I do not joke," Adriana said, and the ice in her voice extinguished Nora's laughter. "I am offering a transaction." She turned to the last page of the contract. "Sign here," Adriana ordered. "And by 5 o'clock this afternoon, your family's debt will disappear. All $450,000. In addition, a $1 million trust fund will be established for Eli, ensuring he receives the best medical care for the rest of his life." Nora stared at that number. $1 million? It was more money than she could even imagine. It was life. It was Eli's future. "And in return," she whispered, though she already knew the answer, "in return, you are mine," Adriana said. "Not in a romantic sense. Don't flatter yourself. You are an employee. Your role is Mrs. Wolf. There will be rules, many rules. You break even one, the entire agreement is void." Adriana stepped closer. Nora could smell her perfume. Expensive, overpowering. "The most important clause," Adriana said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, "is the intimacy clause. There will be none. No emotions, no touching beyond what is necessary in public. Your name on paper, an accessory on my arm. Do you understand?" Nora looked into those gray eyes. She was searching for a hint of warmth, a sign of compassion. She found nothing, only cold calculation. But then she thought of Eli, his pale face on the hospital pillow, the steady beep of the machines keeping him alive. Did she have a choice? I need to read the contract," Nora said, trying to pull back one last shred of control. "No," Adriana said, "you don't need to read it. You just need to sign." She picked up a heavy jet black fountain pen from the desk and pressed it into Nora's hand. The pen was surprisingly cold and heavy. "You are buying your brother's life, Miss Hawley. The price is your signature." Nora looked down at the dotted line on the last page. Her name was already typed beneath it. Nora Elise Hawley. Next to it was Adriana Elise Wolf. She thought about the humiliation. She thought about a year trapped in a gilded cage controlled by this terrifying woman. Then she thought of Eli's laugh, taking a deep breath to keep her hand from shaking. Nora bent down and put the nib to the paper. The only sound in the room was the dry scratch of her signature being written. Adriana watched, her face unreadable. As soon as Nora finished the final K, Graham was already sliding the document out of reach. "It is done," Adriana said. "Graham will take care of the rest with the hospital. My car is waiting downstairs to take you to the estate." "Your belongings?" "I don't have much," Nora replied, her voice small. "Good, it will be easier to replace." Adriana turned her back to Nora and stared out over her city, a clear signal that the meeting was finished. "Welcome to Wolf Industries, Mrs. Wolf." Nora remained there for a moment, the ink on the contract still drying. Her signature, however, was irreversible. She had just sold 1 year of her freedom and had no idea she'd also just mortgaged her heart. The Wolf Manor was not a home. It was a stronghold. Hidden in the heights of Crestmont Hills, it did not invite, intimidated. The jet-black Rolls-Royce that had collected Nora from Adriana's office glided in unnerving silence. Passing through 3 separate security gates before stopping in front of a structure made of glass, steel and white marble, Nora had thought the penthouse office was overwhelming. She'd been wrong. This place was an entire ecosystem of wealth, A man in uniform opened the car door. Nora stepped out. The afternoon rain had stopped, but the air still bit with cold. She had brought only her worn handbag, and her fear dot an older woman stood waiting at the entrance. Dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal gray pantsuit, her hair pulled into a bun so tight it looked severe. She did not smile. "Miss Hawley?" she said, her British accent crisp. "I am Mrs. Whitmore, the housekeeper." Nora nodded. "Very, very nice to meet you. It is no longer Hawley." Mrs. Whitmore corrected immediately, her eyes glancing over Nora's soaked clothes with ill-concealed disgust. "You are now Mrs. Wolfe. Please remember that. Mrs. Adriana does not tolerate sloppiness." Nora shivered, although it wasn't cold. Mrs. Whitmore led her inside. The foyer was as high as a cathedral, and their footsteps echoed on the Italian marble floor. Everything was in neutral tones, white, gray, black, no family photos. Not a single book out of place, not a sign of life. Only perfect arrangement. "Mrs. Adriana is in a meeting," Mrs. Whitmore announced as if speaking of a deity. "She will not be present for dinner. I will instruct you on the rules of the house." They walked through absurdly long corridors, past contemporary art paintings that Nora was sure were worth her entire neighborhood. "This is your wing, Mrs." Whitmore said, opening a large set of double doors. It wasn't a bedroom. It was an apartment. It had its own living room, a marble bathroom as large as Nora's old apartment, and a walk-in closet that was already full. Nora stepped into the closet. Hundreds of outfits, shoes, handbags were hung and folded neatly. All designer, none of them were hers. "Your belongings," Mrs. Whitmore began. "I only have this bag," Nora said softly. "Good," Mrs. Whitmore replied. "We discourage clutter. All of this has been chosen for you. Size 6. You will wear what is designated for each event." Nora touched a silk dress. It was soft and cold. "Rule number 1, Mrs. Whitmore said, her voice pulling Nora from her stupor. "You will not leave the estate grounds without permission and a driver. Rule number 2, all communication with the outside world. Phone, email will be monitored. It is part of the confidentiality clause." Nora's heart tightened. "My brother Eli, we know about Eli," Mrs. Whitmore interrupted. Impatience evident? "A secure line of communication will be established for you to receive updates on his health. You are not to discuss this arrangement with anyone, including him." Nora turned around. "You said monitored?" "Mrs. Wolfe does not pay $1 million for risks," Mrs. Whitmore said bluntly. "Your room is here. Dinner will be served at 8 alone. Be ready." She left, closing the heavy door behind her. The sound reverberated in Nora's chest. Click. Nora stood amidst the cold luxury. She had saved Eli. The hospital had called right as she was on her way here, confirming an anonymous payment had cleared all debts. She had won. So why did she feel like she had just been buried alive? The next 3 days were an eraser of identity. Nora did not see Adriana. The billionaire seemed to be a ghost in her own home, arriving late, leaving early. A shadow passing in the hallway whose lingering expensive perfume Nora only managed to catch. Instead, Nora was handled by Mrs. Whitmore, an invisible army. The first day was about appearance. A hairstylist came and cut off her long, slightly frizzy hair, replacing it with a sophisticated short bob, more manageable. An esthetician came to treat her skin. Mrs. Wolfe must always be flawless. Mrs. Whitmore supervised, arms crossed. Nora looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was a stranger, beautiful but empty. The second day was about demeanor. They practiced walking literally. "No shuffling, Mrs. Wolfe," Mrs. Whitmore chided as Nora wobbled on 12 centimeters Louis Vuitton heels. "Back straight. Every step must have purpose. You're no longer a waitress. You are a representative of Wolfe Industries." They taught her how to eat. Dinner that night was a disastrous rehearsal with 6 different types of forks for a meal she couldn't even pronounce. "This fork is for the fish," Mrs. Whitmore pointed out, her tone like speaking to a foolish child. Nora felt herself shrink. Sorry. Don't be sorry, she said. Be correct. The isolation was cruel. She was allowed to call Eli once, a monitored video call for 5 minutes. He looked better, his cheeks a little rosier. They said my surgery's scheduled, Nora, he said cheerfully. They said you found an amazing new job. What are you doing? Nora tried to swallow the lump in her throat, smiling through the camera. I'm an assistant for a big company. They're taking very good care of me. Awesome. The call ended. Nora sat in her room looking out at the perfectly manicured garden she wasn't allowed to walk in. She cried. The third day was about the story. This was the most important part. Mrs. Whitmore handed her a thin file. This is your biography. Memorize it. The official story was Nora Hawley, a young art historian, a blatant lie. She dropped out of community college to work, had met Adriana Wolf at a museum fundraiser. It was love at first sight. They had a secret romance for 6 months before deciding to marry. But I've never been to a museum. You have now Mrs. Whitmore cut in. Mrs. Wolf is a major patron. Your first gala is this Friday? There will be press. You are not allowed to get a single detail wrong. Nor read it. Every word was false. It erased her parents, her debt, her real life. It turned her into a carefully crafted accessory for Adriana Wolf. That night, she couldn't sleep. She wandered in the darkness of her wing, feeling like a caged animal. She went out onto the balcony, looking down at the pool, glowing an eerie blue below, and she saw her Adriana standing alone by the pool. She wore black silk pajamas, but still exuded power as if wearing her daytime suit. She was staring at the water, motionless as a statue. Nora held her breath as if sensing it. Adriana slowly looked up. Their eyes met across the dark space. Just for a second, Adriana's gaze wasn't cold as usual. It was empty, a weary, almost painful emptiness. But as soon as Nora realized it, the wall of ice returned. Adriana turned away and disappeared into the darkness of the house. Nora shivered, and this time it wasn't from fear of Mrs. Whitmore. On the 4th day, Adriana was finally home for dinner. Nora was prepared. She wore the navy blue dress Mrs. Whitmore had chosen. Her hair was in a neat bun. She remembered which fork to use. The meal took place in heavy silence. The only sound was the scraping of silver cutlery against porcelain plates. Adriana sat at the other end of the long mahogany table, absorbed in her tablet. She didn't even look at Nora. Humiliation rose in Nora's throat. She wasn't a person. She was just another expensive decoration in this room. The weather was nice today. Nora finally spoke just to break the stifling silence. Adriana looked up, her gray eyes expressionless. We do not make small talk, Nora. That is not part of the agreement. I don't even know if my name is Nora or Mrs. Wolf anymore, Nora blurted out, her voice trembling with anger. You're not even here. You threw me to your housekeeper as if I were a dog that needed training. A dangerous silence fell over the room. Adriana slowly put her tablet down. She folded her napkin, placed it beside her plate, then she stood up, walked purposefully around the long table until she was standing right behind Nora. Nora held her breath. She could feel the warmth radiating from Adriana. You are in my house, Adriana whispered, her voice low and dangerous. Right by Nora's ear. You wear my clothes, you breathe my air, and you are here by my permission. She placed one hand on Nora's shoulder. Her fingers were strong, gripping Nora's collarbone just enough to cause pain. Mrs. Whitmore trains you because I do not have time for immaturity. I am running an empire. You are just one small replaceable part in that machine. I am not a machine, Nora whispered, hot tears stinging her eyes. You're exactly what the contract says you are, Adriana hissed. An obligation. She let go of Nora and stepped back. Nora gasped for air. On Friday, Adriana announced returning to her professional coldness. You will make your public debut. You will smile. You will recite the correct lines. And you will not disappoint me. She walked towards the door. And Nora, she added without turning back. Never forget why you are here. You're an investment, and I always protect my investments." Adriana left, leaving Nora alone in the vast, cold dining room. Nora stared at her barely touched plate of food. Adriana had warned her. But as Nora watched the straight back of that woman, she wondered, why were Adriana's eyes when she thought no one was following her from the window last night? Friday arrived as fast as a death sentence. Nora had not spoken to Adriana since that disastrous dinner. The house became even quieter if that was possible. Anticipation weighed heavily on the air, thick and suffocating. At exactly 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Mrs. Whitmore and 2 assistants Nora had never met entered her room. They did not knock. They were like a surgical team, and Nora was the patient. "Sit down," Mrs. Whitmore ordered. For the next 2 hours, Nora was plucked, polished, painted, and molded. She sat immobile as a makeup artist erased every trace of fatigue or rebellion from her face, replacing it with a flawless, neutral look. A hairdresser curled and pinned her short hair into an intricate style, revealing her neck and collarbones. Finally was the dress. It was hanging in a separate black garment bag. Mrs. Whitmore unzipped it herself. Nora held her breath. The dress was a deep sapphire blue, almost black in the low light, but sparkled like a night sky when it caught the light. It was made of silk and velvet, clinging to her body like a second skin before flaring slightly at the knees. It was backless. Completely backless. I can't wear this," Nora whispered. It was too revealing. Too expensive, too sensual. "You will wear what is required," Mrs. Whitmore said, her voice devoid of emotion. "It is custom-made. Do not ruin it." They put the dress on her. It fit like a glove, cold and heavy. Then came the jewelry, not the cheap costume pieces she was used to. A diamond necklace and earring set. The stones were ice cold against her skin. "This is the night collection," Mrs. Whitmore said. "A gift from Mrs. Wolfe to you." "That is your story tonight, if anyone asks." Nora looked at her reflection in the large mirror. The woman looking back at her was stunning, breathtakingly beautiful, and a complete stranger. This was not Nora Hawley, who worked 2 jobs to pay rent. This was an expensive work of art, a perfectly crafted doll. "Where is she?" Nora asked, her voice sounding small. "Mrs. Adriana is waiting in the car." "You are 5 minutes late." Nora followed Mrs. Whitmore down the grand hall. Her Christian Louis Vuitton high heels red soles, Mrs. Whitmore had emphasized, clicked nervously on the marble floor. The Rolls-Royce was waiting, its engine idling silently. The rear door opened. Adriana was sitting inside. If Nora was the night sky, then Adriana was icier. She wore a perfectly tailored white pantsuit, but instead of a shirt underneath, she wore only a stunning emerald necklace shimmering on her sternum. Her hair was slicked back, smooth and sharp. She looked like a war goddess who had just stepped out of Vogue. Adriana did not look at Nora as she got in. She was staring straight ahead. "Have you memorized your biography?" Adriana asked, her voice cold as the car began to roll through the security gate. "Yes," Nora replied. Art historian met at the fundraiser. "Good." Adriana turned to her. Her gray eyes swept over Nora, assessing every seam. It was not a look of admiration. It was an inventory. "The only thing real about you tonight are those diamonds," Adriana said. "Don't lose them." "I will try," Nora said, defiance creeping into her voice. An almost imperceptible smirk appeared on Adriana's lips. "Don't try. Do." She handed Nora a crystal flute of champagne. "Drink. It will help your nerves, but only 1 glass." "I don't pay for a drunk wife." Nora took the glass, her fingers trembling slightly. Do you enjoy this? Controlling everything like this?" Adriana looked out the window, the city lights gliding across her face. "I don't enjoy or not enjoy, Nora. I win. That is all that matters." She turned back, her eyes sharp as knives. "Tonight we are madly in love. Do you understand? You look at me like I am the center of your universe. You laugh at my jokes even when they are not funny. And you touch me. Nora's heart skipped a beat. Touch, touchy when necessary. Adriana said, "Take my arm." "Place your hand on my arm." The public likes small gestures. It makes them believe the story. The car slowed down. Nora could hear the screaming of the crowd outside. And Nora, Adriana said, her voice lowering, almost serious, "Do not be afraid. They can smell fear. Tonight you are a wolf. Act like it." The car door opened and Nora was assaulted by a wall of sound and light. Hundreds of cameras flashed at once, turning the night into day. Shouts of Adriana rang out from all sides. Reporters jostled behind the red velvet ropes. Nora froze. It was like being physically attacked. She couldn't breathe. Immediately, she felt Adriana's hand on the small of her back. It was not gentle. It was firm, possessive, and it pushed her forward. "Go," Adriana whispered. A radiant smile for the cameras fixed on her lips, but her voice was only for Nora. "Don't stop!" "Smile and walk." Nora tried to smile, but she felt like her face would crack. She clung to Adriana's arm as if it were her only lifeline in the storm. "Adriana, look over here. Who is the beauty with you? Could this be the mystery woman?" Adriana navigated the crowd with terrifying calm. She didn't stop, but she moved with a deliberate grace, ensuring every camera got the best angle of her white suit and her new wife. "Excellent," Adriana murmured as they walked. "Keep your chin up. You look terrified. Think of something happy. My brother is getting surgery." Nora hissed through her plastered smile. "Then think about that," Adriana replied, still smiling brightly at a photographer. They finally made it inside the hotel's opulent ballroom. It was worse. If the outside was a blitz attack, the inside was a social battlefield. Everyone was here. CEOs, politicians, movie stars, and all eyes were on them. The air was thick with curiosity. Adriana Wolf, the ice queen of Silvercrest City, who had never appeared publicly with a lover, let alone a wife, and a young unknown one at that. "That's her," a woman whispered as they passed. "She looks so normal." "I heard she's a gold digger," another replied. Nora tried to ignore them. She focused on putting one foot in front of the other in the damned shoes. "Adriana, darling." A large man with stark white hair blocked their path. "What a surprise, Senator." Adriana nodded, her smile not reaching her eyes. "So glad you can make it." "I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Nora." "Wife." The senator boomed, grabbing Nora's hand and shaking it too hard. "You've caught quite the whale. Young lady." "Nora is a brilliant art historian," Adriana interjected, her voice smooth as silk. "Specializing in the Italian Renaissance, she finds the brutality of my politics rather primitive." The senator roared with laughter. Nora just smiled weakly, hoping she didn't look like an idiot for knowing nothing about the Renaissance. As they continued walking, Nora whispered, "I don't even know what the Renaissance is." "Neither does anyone here," Adriana replied. "They just want to hear words they recognize." For the next hour, they played their parts. Adriana introduced Nora. Nora smiled. Adriana placed a hand on Nora's waist, pulling her close when a Silvercrest City Times photographer walked by. The touch burned Nora's skin, even through the silk. It was possessive, a declaration. "This is mine." Nora realized something frightening. Adriana was good at this. Too good. The way she looked at Nora, the way she chuckled softly at something Nora said, it was completely convincing. If Nora didn't know better, she would have believed Adriana Wolf was deeply in love with her. The performance went smoothly, too smoothly, until Damien Cross appeared. He was Adriana's bitter rival from a hostile takeover 2 years ago. Adriana had won. Damien was clearly still sore. He approached them, a glass of whiskey sloshing dangerously in his hand, a smug smirk on his face. Adriana, he drawled, finally settling down. "I must say I'm surprised. I always thought you'd marry your company, Damien." Adriana nodded, her smile chilling by several degrees. "I see you're still drinking that cheap whiskey." Damien chuckled. His eyes moved to Nora, raking over her with a crude appraisal. And this must be the latest acquisition. How much did she cost? The air around them thickened. Nora felt the blood drain from her face. Am her wife, Nora said, her voice trembling. Oh, wife, Damien sneered. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. Listen, sweetheart, I don't know where she dug you up from. A strip club? A street corner? He sneered. But here's my advice, take the money and run. She'd chew you up and spit you out before dessert. The words hit like a slap. The conversation around them died instantly as people nearby went silent, watching. Nora froze. She wanted to bolt. She wanted to smack him. Instead, she just stood there, shaking like a trapped animal. Instinctively, she turned to Adriana for support. But Adriana remained still, her expression carved from ice, unreadable. She wasn't stepping in with a cold twist in her stomach. Nora realized, I'm just a contract. Damien saw her waver and went in for another blow. Tell me, you art historian, he mocked. What's your favorite piece? A nice fat check? Nora shut her eyes. And then it happened. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't a shove. It was quicker than that. Adriana's hand, which had been resting casually on Nora's waist, suddenly clamped down, fingers digging into her hip as she yanked Nora hard against her side. At the same time, Adriana stepped subtly forward, placing herself between Nora and Damien. Damien, Adriana said. Her voice wasn't raised, but it sliced through the room's noise like a blade of ice. I think you're confused. Oh, am I? Damien scoffed. Yes, Adriana replied. You're assuming I care about your opinion. She stared straight into his eyes. Now, if you don't mind, you're bothering my wife. She put particular emphasis on the last word. Then Adriana did something that wasn't in any script, something that had never appeared in their contract. She bent down and kissed Nora. It wasn't tender. It wasn't romantic. It was a declaration of power. Adriana's lips were soft but unyielding, a public claim of ownership in front of everyone. It lasted no more than 2 seconds, but it left Nora dizzy. When Adriana pulled away, her gaze was still fixed on Damien, yet Nora could feel her warm breath lingering on her mouth. Damien looked as if someone had slapped him. He recoiled, muttered something under his breath, and turned away, disappearing into the crowd. For a brief moment, the world around them went silent. Adriana finally looked back at Nora. The fake social smile had vanished. Her features were tight, strained. Her eyes dropped to Nora's lips, the ones she had just kissed. Nora couldn't seem to draw in air when their hands had touched earlier in front of hundreds of cameras. The spark between them hadn't been acting. They both knew that. And this kiss was the most obvious violation of their agreement so far. Go, Adriana whispered, grabbing Nora's hand. This time, her grip was firm and faintly shaking. Just a little. She tugged Nora along, not toward the crowd, but toward a side exit. The Rolls-Royce slid through the streets in near total silence. It felt even heavier than the quiet that had hung over the dining room the night before. It was a dense silence, alive with everything that had just unfolded. Damien Cross's taunts. Adriana's possessive hold. And the kiss. God, that kiss? Nora sat curled on the far end of the wide leather seat, doing everything she could not to breathe too loud. Her lips still tingled a strange mix of pressure, fading warmth, and the lingering trace of Adriana's expensive perfume. It had been both an assault and a rescue. She stole a glance to the side. Adriana was staring out the window, but it was clear she wasn't really seeing the Silvercrest city lights streaming past. She was looking somewhere Nora couldn't see. The wall of ice was back, but there were cracks at the edges. Her fingers, the fingers that had grabbed Nora's hand tremblingly, were now tapping a fast, uncontrolled rhythm on the wooden armrest. She was angry. No, not angry. She was unraveling. The woman who had said, "We do not make small talk and I do not joke," had just lost control in front of hundreds of people just because of an insult from a rival. She had violated the most important clause in her own contract. About that kiss, Nora began, her voice so small it was almost inaudible. Don't, Adriana, cut her off, her voice sharp as broken glass. She didn't turn around. Tonight, nothing happened. Nothing happened. Nora couldn't believe it. You kissed me in front of Damien Cross, in front of everyone. It was a strategic move, Adriana said, her voice regaining its robotic coldness. Cross publicly challenged my ownership, I responded. It was a business move, a show of power, nothing more. It didn't feel like a business move, Nora whispered, her hand unconsciously lifting to touch her lips. Slap. Adriana slammed her hand down on the armrest. The sound made Nora jump. You think I wanted to do that? Adriana spun around, and for the first time, Nora saw real panic in those gray eyes. An anger not directed at Nora, but at herself. I have spent my entire life building an impenetrable image. And tonight, in 30 seconds, I let a stupid drunkard and you destroy it. Me? What did I do? You were there? Adriana hissed. You were vulnerable. You made me react. The car stopped. They had arrived at the fortress. The car door opened, but Adriana didn't move. Go to your room, she ordered, her voice tired and depleted. Do not come out. I don't want to see you until Mrs. Whitmore informs you. Nora hurried out of the car, feeling like she had just been slapped a second time. A show of power. That was all she meant to her. An asset to be protected, just like a building or a stock. She ran through the cold foyer, hot tears of shame and another emotion she couldn't name, disappointment. Nora couldn't sleep. The adrenaline from the gala was still simmering in her bloodstream. Her luxurious room felt more suffocating than ever. The gilded cage, she had been ordered to stay put, but she was tired of following orders. That kiss, no matter what Adriana said, had changed the rules. It showed that Adriana was not a machine. She was human, and tonight she had acted like one. What could make a woman like Adriana Wolf lose control like that? 3 o'clock in the morning. The house was submerged in silence. Nora slowly opened the heavy door of her room. She walked barefoot on the cold marble floor, feeling like a thief in her own prison. She walked past the guest area, past the disastrous dining room, and headed for a part of the house that Mrs. Whitmore had made clear was not for her. The East Wing. Unlike the rest of the estate, this place was dark and old. The air smelled of dust and polish that hadn't been used in a long time. She followed the hallway, guided by a single weak light emanating from beneath a slightly open door. She heard a sound, the clinking of glass against glass, the sound of liquid being poured. Her heart pounded. She should turn back. She should run back to her room, but she pushed the door gently. It was a library, but unlike the other cold, modern showrooms, this room was warm. The walls were lined with real leather-bound books. There was a grand piano in the corner and worn velvet armchairs. It had soul, and Adriana was there. She had changed out of the white suit. Now she only wore a thin black silk robe. Her perfect hair was undone, falling messily around her shoulders. She was standing in front of a large portrait holding a glass of strong liquor whiskey. Nora guessed in her hand. Adriana didn't turn, but she spoke. I told you to stay in your room. I couldn't sleep, Nora mumbled. Then go take a sleeping pill, Adriana said, her voice clearly from alcohol. Nora started to back away, but then she saw what Adriana was staring at. It was an oil portrait, not an abstract piece. It was a woman. A beautiful woman with fiery red hair and a radiant smile. Who is she? Nora asked, stepping into the room. None of your business? Adriana replied, taking a large gulp. Tonight, Nora said, her voice firmer. When Damien Cross called me, you know, your eyes. It wasn't just because of me. It was because of him. Adriana finally turned. Her gray eyes were bloodshot. Her perfect makeup was streaked slightly. She looked dangerous and broken. You're smart, Adriana sneered. How much do they pay the waitress at the cafe to be so smart? Who is she? Nora repeated, pointing at the painting. Adriana laughed, a dry, mirthless sound. That is my expensive lesson. Meet Serena. Adriana walked to a small table and picked up a silver photo frame that was lying face down. She tossed it towards Nora. Nora flinched and caught it. It was an older photo. Adriana looking almost 15 years younger. She was smiling, a radiant, carefree smile that Nora couldn't imagine. Her arms were wrapped around the red-haired woman from the painting. They looked happy and in love. And standing next to them, smiling like a shark, was a younger Damien Cross. They were friends? Nora whispered, unable to tear her eyes from the photo. Friends? Adriana scoffed. Damien was my first business partner. Serena was everything. She went to the window, looking out at the dark garden. I met her when I was trying to build this company from the ashes my father left. I was the brains. She was the heart. She was the one everyone loved. She was the one who convinced investors to trust a cold, ruthless 5-year-old woman. Adriana turned back, her eyes distant. We built it together, every brick. I trusted her more than myself. I loved her foolishly. Silence filled the room. This was a confession. What happened? Nora asked, although she was starting to guess. Damien, Adriana spat the name like poison. He was always jealous of me, but he coveted her. And Serena, she loved wealth more than she loved me. They conspired together. She pointed at the room. This was her world. Music, art, books. I built it for her. They stole a patent. Adriana continued, her voice cold with the memory. A core technology we had developed for 3 years. Damien took it to market under his name. Serena cleaned out our personal accounts. She took everything that wasn't nailed down. I didn't just lose my company, Adriana whispered. The anger now faded to a dull ache. I lost everything. It took me 6 years to sue them, to regain control of my company, to rebuild this wall. She gestured around to ensure that no one could ever touch me again. Now Nora understood everything. The coldness, the empty house, and most importantly, the contract, the no intimacy clause, Nora said. It's because of her. It's because of me, Adriana corrected, her gaze sharp again. I learned my lesson. Emotion is a weakness. Love is an illusion created by con artists to take what you have. Everyone has a price, Nora, including you. That statement was like a slap, but Nora didn't flinch. She looked at the most powerful woman in Silvercrest City standing there, trembling in her silk robe, exposing her biggest scar. In the dark room, Adriana had spoken of betrayal. And Nora realized the monster everyone rumored about was actually just a person terrified to death of being hurt again. That's why you reacted that way tonight, Nora said. It wasn't a question. Damien Cross wasn't just insulting me. He was insulting her through me. Adriana didn't answer. She turned her face away. Nora carefully placed the frame back on the table. And not her, Adriana. You are exactly her, Adriana said, her voice ice cold, the wall rebuilt. You took the money. You signed a contract. You are a transaction. Adriana walked towards the door. But you did well tonight. That kiss, it sent a message to Damien that you, unlike Serena, are not for sale, that you are mine. She stopped at the threshold, turned back to look at Nora, her gray eyes no longer angry, only infinitely weary. Now you know, she said, you know why this contract is the only way. You are a transaction, Nora. You have to be, because I can survive anything except for that happening again. Adriana left, leaving Nora alone in the forgotten library. With the ghost of Serena and the cold, hard truth about Adriana Wolf's sealed heart. Understanding is a dangerous thing. After the night in the library, the house seemed to hold its breath. Adriana had achieved what she never wanted. She had been known. The consequence was she disappeared into work with a new ruthlessness. If before she was the Ice Queen, now she was the eye of the storm. Meetings began at 500 a.m. Shouts, despite being soundproofed, still echoed from her home office. She fired a high-level executive over the phone just during breakfast, not bothering to look up from her tablet, and she avoided Nora like the plague. If they accidentally passed each other in the vast hall, Adriana would look straight through Nora as if she were part of the wall. She didn't call her Mrs. Wolf or Nora. She didn't call her anything at all. Penora was no longer afraid. Compassion had replaced fear. She saw the woman who was panicking, punishing the whole world for revealing her scar. One morning, Nora, in a small act of rebellion, made a cup of coffee herself and brought it to Adriana's office, where Mrs. Whitmore never dared to venture before 10 a.m. She knocked. No answer. She pushed the door open and entered. Adriana was standing with her back turned, looking out the window, hands on her hips. She was already wearing her power suit, but there was something about her posture, a deep exhaustion. "I brought coffee," Nora said softly. Adriana stiffened, but did not turn around. "Mrs. Whitmore brings the coffee." "Mrs. Whitmore makes terrible coffee," Nora said. "This kind is better. It has a little cinnamon." Silence stretched. Adriana slowly turned around. Her gray eyes were tired but full of weariness. "What are you doing? Bringing coffee too?" "My wife," Nora said, trying a smile. That smile died instantly under Adriana's gaze. "We are not friends," Adriana said, her voice cold, sharp, cutting off all warmth. "You are not my confidant. That night was a mistake. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time." She stepped forward and took the cup from Nora's hand, but only to place it forcefully on the desk. "Do not mistake my drunken confession for an invitation." "You are an employee, Miss Hawley. Now get out, Miss Hawley." That slap hurt more than the time in the dining room. She was trying to erase her, put her back in her transaction box. "Fine," Nora said, keeping her voice steady. "But listen, Adriana, you can fire the whole world, but you still have to wake up with yourself." Nora turned away, leaving Adriana alone with the cup of coffee she would never drink. Control was Adriana's oxygen, and she was feeling suffocated. She had let Nora get too close. She'd exposed her weakness, and now Nora's presence in the house was no longer a transaction, but a constant reminder of her failure to control her emotions. Adriana needed to regain control. She needed to remind Nora and herself exactly who held all the cards. She summoned Nora to the library, the forbidden's room itself, late in the afternoon. When Nora entered, the air was heavy. This time, there was no whiskey, only business. Adriana stood behind Serena's massive mahogany desk. "Sit down," she ordered. Nora sat down, feeling uneasy. "I've reviewed the after arrangements for your brother," Adriana said, her tone purely business. She was looking at a document. Nora's heart pounded fast. "Eli, is something wrong?" "The surgery?" "The surgery was successful." Adriana interrupted. "I am merely concerned with my investment. His recovery is crucial. The local environment is not ideal." "Not ideal? What do you mean?" "Silvercrest City hospitals." "The pollution." "Your frequent access," Adriana said, flipping a page as if discussing a quarterly report. "It's a logistical mess." "Therefore, I have made arrangements." She lifted her gaze, gray eyes turning icy. "Next Tuesday, Eli will be transferred to a private recovery facility in Northvale. The Northvale Recovery Institute. The best in the world. All expenses covered." Nora felt as if the floor had vanished beneath her. "Northvale?" "Yes, that's halfway across the world." Nora shot to her feet. "I can't visit him in Northvale." "That is precisely the point," Adriana replied, her voice terrifyingly calm. "Your constant visits to the hospital are a security risk. They draw attention. They complicate our narrative, complicate our story." Nora repeated, stunned. "That is my brother. He's the only family I have left. He is also the only leverage you hold over me," Adriana stated bluntly. "And I do not like uncontrolled leverage." There it was, the final blow. This wasn't truly about Eli's health. This was about power. "You can't do that," Nora whispered, her voice shaking with fury. "I can," Adriana answered. "I already have. Your contract clearly states you must comply with all directives related to maintaining public image. This falls under that." Whatever sympathy Nora had felt for her earlier vanished. All that remained was pure, blazing anger. "You are a monster," she hissed. "I am a businesswoman," Adriana corrected. "No." Nora slammed both palms on the desk. "You're a coward. You're punishing me because I saw you cry in this very room. You're punishing me because I know the name Serena." Adriana shot to her feet. The name hit the air like a gunshot. "You are not allowed to say that name." "Serena, Serena, Serena," Nora screamed. "You're doing to me exactly what she did to you. She took your money and you're trying to take my soul. You're trying to take my brother away just because you're scared. You know nothing about fear," Adriana roared, coming around the desk toward her. "I know you." Nora backed up until her shoulders struck the bookshelf. "I know you are the loneliest, most terrified person I have ever met. You would rather burn down your entire world and mine than risk feeling anything ever again." They were inches apart now. The tension in the room was so intense it felt almost physical, like heat shimmering in the air. Both were breathing hard, Nora from rage, Adriana from something far more volatile. Adriana's iron control had shattered. The frozen mask had cracked, revealing the violent fire underneath. "You think this is a game?" Adriana whispered, her tone deadly. She braced both hands on the bookshelf, one to each side of Nora's head, caging her in. Her perfume mingled with the scent of old paper and wood, and adrenaline seemed to thicken the air. "You brought this on with Eli," Adriana hissed. "You crossed a line. You saw things you were never supposed to see. You turned a clean transaction into a mess." "I didn't do anything," Nora protested, forcing herself not to look away, though her heart hammered like a trapped bird. "You kissed me." "That was a tactical error," Adriana said flatly. "So is this tactical?" Nora shot back, eyes fixed on Adriana's mouth. That defiance, that was what finally broke it. For 1 second, Adriana looked at Nora as if she wanted to kill her. And in the next, she looked at her as if she wanted something much worse. "This," Adriana whispered, her voice breaking, "is weakness. This is ruin." She leaned down. "This kiss was nothing like the one at the gala. That kiss was Cold War, a declaration. This kiss was hot war. It was fierce, angry, and utterly desperate. It was punishment and confession in the same breath." Adriana's lips crashed against. Nora's roughly demanding as if she was trying to take the answer to a question she was too terrified to ask. Nora was stunned for a second, but then her own anger, her own loneliness, and the forbidden attraction that had been simmering for weeks exploded. She responded. She didn't just respond. She fought back. Nora's hands fisted in the lapels of Adriana's expensive suit, pulling her closer, erasing the last distance between them. This wasn't a billionaire and a debtor. This was two women, both trapped, clawing for a way out. It was messy and imperfect. A choked groan tore from Adriana's throat as Nora's fingers tangled in her perfectly coiffed hair. Adriana pushed Nora harder into the bookshelf, and a book fell to the floor with a loud thud, but neither of them cared. Adriana tasted Nora's anger, and underneath it, forgiveness. Nora tasted whiskey, and Adriana's lost control. How long did it last? A few seconds? A few minutes? They broke apart, both gasping for air. The room felt vacuum-sealed. They just stared at each other, horrified and stunned. Reality crashed down like a bucket of cold water. The contract said no love. It said no intimacy. But it said nothing about what to do when they irrevocably breached it. Adriana stumbled back as if burned. Her gray eyes were wide, not with anger, but with raw fear. She looked at Nora, then her own lips, then her hands, as if they no longer belonged to her. She had lost control completely. "Get out," Adriana whispered, her voice no longer that of a CEO, but of someone who had just stepped over a cliff. "Adriana, Nora reached out." I said, "Get out." Adriana screamed, recoiling towards the desk. Nora watched the most powerful woman in Silvercrest City trembling. "The contract," Adriana gasped, gripping the edge of the desk. "The contract is breached." The next morning, the estate was no longer silent. It was dead. The silence before it carried anticipation, attention. This silence was that of a tomb. Nora had not slept. She sat on her expensive silk bed, still wearing the clothes from last night, her body still vibrating with the memory of that kiss, the anger, the desperation, and the heat. Her anger had dissipated, leaving only a painful confusion. Adriana had panicked. She had fled. Nora waited. She waited for a scream, another confrontation. She waited for Mrs. Whitmore to come and announce she had violated some rule. But there was nothing. Even breakfast was not brought. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the silence became unbearable. Nora stood up. If Adriana was going to punish her, she had to do it while looking her in the eye. She went straight to Adriana's office. She did not knock. Adriana was standing there, her back turned, talking on the phone. She was back in her armor, a dark navy suit, hair in a bun so tight it was painful. She looked as if last night had never happened. "Cancel it," Adriana said into the phone, her voice cold as steel. "I don't care about the sunk cost. Liquidate that asset." Immediately, she hung up the phone and turned around. When she saw Nora, there was not a hint of surprise or confusion in her eyes, only a cold, empty void. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," Nora said, her voice. "No," Adriana replied. "We knew not. Last night was an unfortunate breach. A temporary loss of control on your part." "On my part?" Nora laughed a dry sound. "You kissed me. You provoked me," Adriana said, walking to the desk. "You used personal information. Information you obtained improperly to cause a reaction. The contract has been voided." "So that's it?" Nora asked, feeling an icy pit opening in her chest. "You breach your own contract and you blame me, then you throw me out." "Precisely," Adriana said without a trace of emotion. She pressed a button on the desk phone. "Mrs. Whitmore, come to my office. Mrs. Wolfe is leaving." "No," Nora said, shaking her head. "You can't. What about Eli?" "Northvale." "Eli," Adriana said, picking up a pen and examining it, "will be transferred as planned. His care, as I said, is dependent on me." It was a threat. Clear and simple. Shut up and disappear or her brother would pay the price. "You really are just like her," Nora whispered, horror and disgust overwhelming her confusion. "You are just as cruel and tyrannical as Serena." The pen in Adriana's hand snapped in two. Crack! At that moment, the office door burst open, but it wasn't Mrs. Whitmore. It was Graham, the lawyer. His face was pale. "Adriana," he panted, completely ignoring Nora's presence. "You need to see this." "I'm busy, Graham." "No," Graham interrupted. Something Nora never thought possible. "You need to see this right now." He snatched the remote and turned on the giant TV screen that took up almost an entire wall, which was usually used to display stock market charts. It was on the GNN news channel, and on the screen was Nora's photo. Not the glamorous photo from the gala, but her old driver's license photo. Hair messy, eyes tired. Next to it was the photo of Adriana at the party, arm around Nora's waist. The headline ran below, "The $1 million bride. Inside billionaire Adriana Wolfe's sham marriage. Part B, the storm arrives." Nora felt like the air was sucked out of her lungs. "No, no." She backed away. "It's everywhere," Graham said, his voice trembling. Silvercrest City Times, Forbes. Someone leaked. And they have the details. A blonde reporter was speaking with a grave expression. A source close reveals that the whirlwind marriage was actually a cold business transaction. Adriana Wolfe, 40, allegedly bought Miss Halley, 24, to fulfill a clause in her father's will. How? Adriana whispered. She moved closer to the screen, her face as white as paper. This was the first time Nora had seen her truly afraid. It gets worse, Graham said, switching to a gossip website. The website had an even worse headline. From waitress to scam queen, the profile of gold digger Nora Hale. They had dug. They had pictures of Nora in her barista uniform at the old coffee shop. They had public records of her father's medical debt. They had long lens photos of Eli being put into an ambulance. The story had been twisted into a vicious narrative. Nora the predator. But that's a lie. Nora shouted. You were the one who found me. Adriana's phone started ringing. Then her desk phone rang. Both at the same time. That's the board, Adriana said, her voice dead. She looked at the headline, then at Nora. The fear in her eyes vanished. It was replaced by something even more terrifying. An ice-cold calculation. The fire was out. Only ashes remained. They know about Serena, Adriana said, almost to herself. They know about Damien. Damien? Nora was stunned. He did this? He didn't leak it? Adriana said. Picking up the phone, he added fuel to the fire. She looked at Nora, and that gaze would haunt her forever. He has telling the world I made the same mistake again, that I'm too weak from emotions to run the company. She answered the phone, her voice perfectly calm. Chairman Roth, yes, I'm watching it. No, it's not what it looks like. Yes, I understand. It's being handled. She hung up. Graham, Adriana said, her voice sharp and without a hint of hesitation. Prepare a press conference 400 p.m. today at the main lobby of Wolf Industries. What are we going to say? Graham asked. Adriana turned to look at Nora. This time there was no anger, no passion, nothing. Just a CEO cleaning up a mess. We will tell the truth, Adriana said. My version, Adriana? No, Nora stepped forward. We can tell them we actually what you now, the words died in her throat. Adriana looked at her as if she were a naive child. You don't understand at all, do you? This is a boardroom. This is war, and I just lost my nuclear weapon because of you. Am your weapon? You are my problem. Adriana hissed. The board is calling for a vote of no confidence. They think I'm unstable. They think this gold digger has control over me. They think I too. So tell them the truth. Nora pleaded, tears starting to flow. Tell them it was your contract. That you forced me. Adriana laughed out loud. A terrible sound. And admit that I've been lying to them for the past 6 months. Admit that I violated the wills clause. It'd lose the company before sunset. So what will you do? Nora whispered, cold fear gripping her heart. Adriana stepped close to Nora. She raised her hand, and for one crazy second, Nora thought she was going to wipe away her tears. Instead, Adriana coldly adjusted the collar of Nora's shirt. I am going to do what I should have done from the beginning, Adriana said, her voice low and decisive. I am going to cut my losses. She turned to Graham. Prepare 2 things. First, a restraining order against Nora Hale for 200 meters on the grounds of harassment and extortion. Nora's heart stopped beating. What? What? Second, Adriana continued without looking at her, call the Northvale Recovery Institute in Northvale. Tell them the funding for patient Eli Hale has been suspended until further notice due to ongoing legal issues. It was a shot, an execution shot. Nora collapsed. No, Adriana. No, please. You can't do that to him. He did nothing. Exactly, Adriana said, returning to her desk. And you will ensure he stays safe by disappearing. She looked at Nora. You will not talk to the press. You will not talk to anyone. You will sign whatever Graham gives you. In return, when this blows over, perhaps I will reconsider Eli's medical care. Nora stared at the woman she had kissed last night. The monster was back. Or perhaps it had never really left. Nora looked at the headline on the TV again. Billionaire wolf duped by gold digger. And she realized Adriana wasn't going to deny it. She was going to use it. You are going to make me the villain. Nora whispered, a terrible truth dawning on her. You are going to go out there and say I deceived you. You are going to play the victim. Adriana shrugged. A cold gesture. It's a better story. Nora wiped her tears. The anger returned, but this time it was ice cold. She had nothing left to lose. You learned that from Serena, didn't you? Adriana froze. Turning your lover into the enemy to save your empire, Nora said, her voice surprisingly clear and strong. Except this time, you've gotten better at it. You even added medical kidnapping. Adriana did not answer. She just looked at her. Mrs. Whitmore, Adriana's voice came over the intercom system. Escort Miss Halley from the estate immediately. She is not allowed to take anything with her. Nora didn't wait for Mrs. Whitmore. She turned on her heel, walking with the last shred of dignity she had left. When she reached the door, she stopped. I thought you kissed me because you felt something, she said without turning back. But I was wrong. You kissed me for the same reason you do everything else. And what is that? Adriana's voice came from behind, distant and cold. Because you could. Nora walked out the door, past a stunned Mrs. Whitmore, and never looked back. Nora did not run. She walked. She walked until the red-soled Louis Vuitton high heels, the 12-centimeter torture devices that Mrs. Whitmore forced her to wear, blistered her heels. She walked until blood began to seep out, soaking into the thin silk of her stockings. The physical pain was a welcome distraction from the collapse of her soul. She had walked out of the gates of the Crestmont Hills fortress at 11 in the morning. Not a penny to her name, no phone, no identification. Only expensive clothes which belonged to someone else. A non-existent Mrs. Wolfe, and the restraining order that came with the threat of imprisonment if she came within 200 meters of Adriana. She was famous, and she was homeless. When she reached Solstice Boulevard, they found her. The vultures, the first white van, screeched to a halt right in front of her, almost hitting her. The side door slid open. Flash, flash. Nora, did you extort Mrs. Wolfe? How much money did you take? What happened to your brother, Nora? She covered her face and tried to run. The heels betrayed her. She stumbled and collapsed onto the filthy sidewalk. Her elegant cream suit, the $5,000 outfit she wore when she intended to confront Adriana, was now stained with grease and street dirt. Flash, that photo would be on the front page. The gold digger falls. She ripped off the shoes, ignoring the stinging pain on the soles of her feet, and ran. She ran into an alley, the smell of urine and garbage hitting her in the face, and dry heaved. She hid behind a large dumpster, trembling, listening to the footsteps of the photographers hunting her. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she had hidden in the alley for 4 hours, huddled in the unexpected cold of a gloomy Silvercrest City day. Hunger gnawed at her. She saw it through the window of a bar across the street. A TV mounted on the wall. And then 400 p.m. arrived. Adriana appeared. She stood at the podium in the main lobby of Wolf Industries, looking just like always, perfect, uncheckable, powerful. She wore the charcoal gray suit, the suit she had worn the first day Nora met her. The circle had closed. Today, Adriana began, her voice resonating without a tremor. False and malicious accusations have been made against me and my company. Nora watched as if hypnotized. The truth is, Adriana continued, I met Miss Nora Halley. During a vulnerable period in my life, I was charmed by a tragic story. My compassion was weaponized against me. No, no. Nora covered her mouth to stop herself from screaming. I provided significant financial support, Adriana said, her gray eyes looking straight into the camera. But when that support was not enough, the requests became demands. The demands became extortion. She's lying, Nora whispered to the dirty brick wall. She is lying. I acted unwisely, Adriana admitted. A genius performance of humility. But I assure the board, the shareholders, and the public that mistake has been rectified. The problem has been handled. As of today, I have obtained a permanent restraining order against Miss Hawley. Wolf Industries will continue to move forward." She did not take questions. She stepped down from the podium, more powerful than ever. The stock, which had fallen 15% in the morning, began to recover immediately. Adriana had won. She had played the victim, turned Nora into Serena, and saved her empire. In the alley, Nora Hawley, America's exposed gold digger, finally broke down and cried. Adriana returned to the estate at 6 p.m. Mrs. Whitmore greeted her at the door. "Mrs. Wolf, an effective evening's work." Adriana did not answer. She took off her suit jacket, tossed it onto the nearest chair, and thus she never allowed. She loosened her tie. Graham had called. The board was satisfied. The shareholders were praising. Damien Cross was suspiciously silent, clearly impressed by his rival's ruthlessness. She had won. She had saved the company. So why did she feel like she had just disavowed herself? She went straight to the home office. The coffee cup Nora brought that morning was still on the desk. It was cold. A bit of cinnamon settled at the bottom. You can fire the whole world, but you still have to wake up with yourself. She picked the coffee cup up, intending to throw it against the wall, but she couldn't. She set it down. Then she went to Serena's library. The room was dark and quiet. The pen broken in two was still on the desk. The book that fell from the shelf during their kiss, a volume of Keats' poetry, still lay open on the floor. She had not cleaned it up. She had not allowed Mrs. Whitmore to clean it up. Adriana sat down in the worn velvet armchair where Nora had sat. She looked at the portrait of Serena. "You won," Adriana whispered to the ghost. "You turned me into you." The truth revealed itself mercilessly. She had done it. She had done exactly what Serena had done to her. Destroyed someone who trusted her to save herself. No, worse. Serena only took money. Adriana had taken Nora's family. She had threatened the life of a child. She had destroyed Nora on national television for one reason: to hide the truth that she, Adriana Wolf, had breached her own contract. Not because of Nora, but because she wanted Nora, because that kiss was real. And in that moment, the boardroom victory tasted like ash in her mouth. She had spent her whole life building an empire. Tonight, she had burned it down. The only part left that meant anything just to keep the empty walls. She pulled her phone out. There was still one thing she could control. Nora was out of the alley. She was walking on the highway heading east, not knowing where she was going. Just away from Crestmont Hills. She was exhausted. She no longer felt cold or hungry. She just felt empty. Eli. They had taken Eli. She walked into a quick-stop Mart convenience store. The fluorescent lights painful. She intended to ask to use the phone. The clerk looked at her, recognized her immediately from the TV news playing right above, and scowled. "Get out," he said. "We don't serve your kind here." Nora turned away, the final humiliation complete. She sat on the curb outside under the sickish orange streetlights. She had nothing left. She had lost. The public phone on the corner rang. She startled. It rang once, twice. Nobody answers a public phone. It rang a third time mechanically, as if in a dream. Nora stood up. She had no money, but she picked up the receiver. Maybe it was the wrong number. Hello, her voice was hoarse. Nora Hawley, a strange voice speaking English, but with a European accent, came on the line. "Yes, the signal is not good." The voice said, "Please wait one moment. We are connecting you." There was a click, then a beep, and then Nora. "Nora, is that you?" The air was sucked out of Nora's lungs. She crumpled, holding onto the phone booth to stay upright. "Eli, oh my God. Eli, are you okay? What did they do to you?" I'm sorry. What are you talking about?" "I'm fine." His voice came through, weak but clear. "The doctors came back. They were so nice. They said my surgery was rescheduled sooner. They said there's a new private donor and they just set up this video system for me. I'm in Northvale. Nora, can you believe it? It's like in that Heidi movie. Nora couldn't speak. She just sobbed into the receiver. Nora, are you crying? Don't cry. Illinois. Oh, the doctor says I have to go. I love you. Come visit soon. The call disconnected. Nora stood there. The receiver pressed to her ear, listening to the long dial tone. She had done it. Adriana, on the same day she destroyed her in front of the world, on the same day she played the victim and turned her into an extortionist, had quietly paid for Eli's surgery. She had protected him. She had even arranged for him to call. This was not a business act. This was not a strategic move. This was remorse. Nora hung up. She looked into the darkness of the street. Everything was not simple. Adriana was not a hero, but she also was not the complete monster that Nora thought. She was something in between, something complicated and painful. And for the first time in 12 hours, Nora stopped running. She started thinking. Nora was no longer running. She was thinking Eli's call had changed everything. It didn't erase the fact that Adriana had publicly crucified her on the cross of the media, but it proved one thing. Adriana's cruel act was not the whole story. Even while saving herself, Adriana still protected the only thing that mattered to Nora. She had used the last valuable thing on her person. The night collection diamond earrings she had forgotten to take off in the chaos. They had bought her a rundown motel room in Boyle Heights, a prepaid phone, and a few days to think. The TV in the motel room constantly played her face. Gold Digger hunted. Nora Hawley in hiding. She was not in hiding. She was waiting. On the second day, there was a knock on the door. Not the aggressive pounding of the paparazzi. This knock was polite, hesitant, and expensive. It was Graham, the lawyer. Nora opened the door, hand gripping a can of hairspray, the only weapon she had. Graham looked 10 years older. His expensive suit was wrinkled. Miss Hawley! Nora, he began, clearly extremely uncomfortable. I'm not here with a warrant. I am here at a request. Whose request? Nora asked, her voice. Mrs. Wolfe is about to lose the company, Graham said bluntly. Nora blinked. What? But the press conference, the stock recovered. She won. She won in the public eye, Graham explained, rubbing his temples. But she lost the legal battle when she announced to the world that her marriage was a fraud based on extortion. She also simultaneously announced to the trust board that she had violated the wills clause. He took a breath. By trying to save the company from a PR scandal, she personally handed them the evidence to take it away. Damian Cross and the other board members are calling an emergency vote in 48 hours to strip her of control. They have everything they need. Nora stared at him. A spectacular twist. Adriana, in her desperate attempt to not become Serena, had self-destructed in a way even Serena could not have imagined. So she needs me again, Nora said without a hint of satisfaction. Just infinite weariness. What does she want me to do this time? Go on TV and say I lied. She is not asking for that, Graham said softly. She is only asking to see you. The restraining order was rescinded an hour ago. He handed Nora a new phone still in its box. A car is waiting at the corner. It will take you to her. The decision is yours. Graham left. Nora stared at the box. She could throw it against the wall, smash it, and walk away. She could take the money from the earrings and start a new life. She didn't owe Adriana anything, but she went. The car did not take her to the estate. It took her to the Wolfe Industries building, to the 52nd floor penthouse office, where it all began. It was 2 a.m. The office was dark except for the city lights below. Adriana was standing by the window, back turned exactly like the first time, but this time there was no power suit. She just wore black trousers and a simple gray cashmere sweater. Her hair was down. She looked frighteningly small in the middle of her own empire. You came, Adriana said, her voice lacking its sharpness, only exhaustion. Eli called me, Nora said. It was the only thing she could think of. From Northvale. Adriana closed her eyes. Good, he's safe. Why? Nora stepped forward, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Why destroy me and then save him? Because Adriana turned and the city lights hit her face. Destroying you was business. Saving him was personal. Personal? Nora laughed. You don't know anything about personal. I do. Adriana stepped out of the shadows, and for the first time Nora saw tears glistening in those steel gray eyes. I know that when I stood at that podium lying to the world, turning you into the enemy, that was the easiest moment of my week because it was a role. The difficult moment, she continued, her voice breaking, was that night in the library. When I kissed you, not for the cameras, not for Damien, but because I wanted to, and that scared me more than losing this company. She walked towards the desk. Serena taught me that love is a transaction where you always lose. I spent 15 years believing that, and you came. You were annoying, stubborn, and you saw me. I panicked, Adriana whispered. I did the only thing I knew how to do. I burned the bridge to keep the fortress safe. And now locked inside, and the fortress is collapsing. They will take the company, Adriana said, accepting her fate. Cross Swan? I destroyed myself. Nora looked at the woman who had controlled her life. She saw the monster who had threatened Eli. She saw the protector who paid for his surgery. She saw the lover who kissed her in the library. And she saw a lonely woman cornered by her own past. Then let them take it, Nora said. Adriana looked up. You said you could lose everything except for letting that happen again, Nora said, repeating Adriana's words from the library. Well, it happened. You felt something, and you survived. Adriana said nothing. Why did you call me here, Adriana? Nora asked. Not to save your company. You know it's too late. I called you, Adriana said, her voice barely audible. To see if I was right. Right about what? That you are not like Serena. That you wouldn't take the money and run. That you would come here even after I did the worst. She took a deep breath. I called you to apologize. Silence filled the penthouse office. Apologize, a word that seemed not to exist in Adriana Wolf's dictionary. An apology doesn't erase the gold digger headlines, Nora said, her voice softening but still wounded. I know, Adriana said. I will lose the company. I deserve that. But I can't lose it while you still think I am the monster who threatened your brother. I am that monster. But I'm not only that. Adriana stepped closer, voluntarily closing the distance for the first time. I have prepared a trust fund, Adriana said. Another trust fund for you with my personal money not tied to the company. Whatever they take, they cannot touch it. Enough for you and Eli to live forever. No strings attached. Nora looked at her. This was the final test. The offer the gold digger couldn't refuse. Nora shook her head. No, she said. No, Adriana was stunned. I don't want your money, Adriana. I never did. Nora smiled, a tired, genuine smile. But I will accept your apology. She walked past Adriana to the enormous desk. But you were wrong about one thing. It's not too late. What? To save the company? Nora said, turning back. But not your way. Not with lies or shows of power. With the truth. The truth? Adriana laughed dryly. The truth is a fraudulent marriage contract. No, Nora said, placing her hands on the mahogany desk. The truth is a fraudulent marriage contract that failed. The truth is, you were bound by a stupid will, and I was desperate for my brother. The truth is, we started as a transaction. She looked straight into Adriana's eyes. And the truth is, it didn't end that way. A spark of hope, something wild and dangerous flared in Adriana's eyes. Are you saying? I am saying, Nora said, taking Adriana's hand. We are going to hold another press conference, both of us. This time, no script. We will tell them everything about the will, about the contract, about how you panicked and turned me into the villain. They will shut me down, Adriana whispered. But her hand tightened around Nora's. No, Nora said softly. They'll see a leader who finally dares to tell the truth. Someone brave enough to admit she was wrong. She squeezed Adriana's hand. And someone who dares to love. Isabel glanced down at their joined hands. The 365-day contract, Adriana said. It's still in place. Let them vote, Nora replied. Let Damien Cross do his worst. And if they take the company, you and I will build a new one from scratch. This time, we'll do it right. Adriana looked at Nora, the woman who had once walked into this office in ragged clothes and was now standing here, offering to give up everything for her. No, Adriana said, a slow, genuine smile spreading across her face for the first time. I won't let him take it. She picked up the desk phone. Grum, call a press conference. 9 a.m. No, not in the lobby in the library at the estate. And tell the board the gold digger will be there. She hung up and turned back to Nora. The old contract, Adriana said, was breached. It burned. It's over. She lifted her other hand and gently touched Nora's cheek, a gesture not of possession, but of reverence. The new contract, she whispered, has only one clause. From now on, everything is real. And in the dark penthouse office, 52 floors above the city that had witnessed their downfall, Adriana Wolf finally kissed her wife. Not for strategy, not out of anger, but out of choice. Thank you for watching. Please comment your favorite character, Adriana or Nora, and share this video if you want to see them have a happy ending. Press follow to join the